It is April 13th, 8:41. Um, okay. I was thinking, I touched upon Homo contentus last time. I thought today's the video or journal, whatever. I finally talk about it. I have the essay out with me because I kind of forgot some of the points. But I know it's still like a big thing I kind of believe in, so it's I didn't forget the main parts, but have the essay with me so I could go into the important part. But basically, Homo contentus, as I call it, is a content-seeking animal, and I'm not gonna read through my essay, obviously, but I think just the introduction. Which starts off with, okay, so Aristotle described human as by nature an animal intended to live in polis, coining the term Homo politicus. We're a species of governance and morality, of politicalness described as the moral reflection and association of the distinctly human capacities of, on the one hand, moral reflection, deliberation, and expression, and on the other, of generating multiple forms of association. However, with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, some economists coined a new terminology to describe humans, Homo economicus, which Foucault defined as a subject of interest within a totality which eludes him and which nevertheless founds the rationality of his egoistic choices. In essence, the Industrial Revolution brought about a new form of living, departing from one of political basis to that of rationally maximizing utility. A McLuhanist will see the paradigm shift as an example of media determinism, as we shape our steam engines and thereafter our engines shaped us. Today we are encountering a new technological revolution, the digital revolution. With this, there seems to be a rise of a new species of humans, Homo contentus, or the content-seeking animal. Their life is centered around seeking to produce and consume content. With this, I aim to explore and speculate Homo contentus as a product of media determinism, covering its genealogy and its relation to economics and neuroscience. So that's the basis, basically, to point out that there's Homo politicus that describe, humans as not just another animal, right? We have this political mind. Our sort of motivation can kind of center around politics, but then with Industrial Revolution, that change where utility became how we center our motivation or behavior, whatever, around it. And then with the dawn of the digital revolution, especially with social media, our from my perspective, what I see is people start to have, intent, motivation, not from a perspective necessarily like rationalized utility, but more for content. And I know people say this as a meme, but I think it goes beyond just memeing about it. People do revolve their life around content to a much more bigger extent than we realize. I mean, this whole thing I'm doing is also kind of, a case in point, right? So then I talked about the genealogy, and then the first of all, the defining content, define content as, so the definition of content here, using concept of McLuhan and semiotics. I forgot why, but I'm using McLuhan semiotics ideas to formulate the definition of content, which is content as signs and symbols produced and consumed through a medium. Oh, okay, medium, so McLuhan medium, which is like media, basically. So content is basically signs or like method of communication almost, that is contained within a media. So it could be this, it could be a book with writing, it could be TV, it could be anything. Whatever the sign is on, as long as it's technology, or it could be beyond just technology. If it's some sort of medium, it is content. Okay. So then this then begs the question. I mean, a critique here already, I do want to point out that technically that's like everything, right? Any sign could be considered part of a medium, even, I want to say, I mean, I don't know. Like normal conversation, I guess that's not really medium. Yeah, medium in the sense more of technology. If you, because there's like arguments, right, that medium isn't just technology. Like, I remember reading an excerpt about how your pet dog can be a medium, because it allows you to connect with someone else through that dog and so on. But in general, but then like you can't really see. But in general, I'm talking about technology. So like, even through phones or whatever. Okay. Anyways, so that's what content is. But then here's the thing, right? This definition of content has been around since like the dawn of time, because the moment you have a medium, usually it comes with a content. But what makes content so different today is basically the ubiquity, accessibility, and variability of content compared to the past. So the reason why we can be described as Homo contentus now instead of in the past is because of that. Because compared to the past, it wasn't the ubiquity, accessibility, and variability of content wasn't to the extent, as the past. Yeah, and then I talk about social media because it's an important part, and I think, well, you can kind of tell how social media contributes to the three dimensions: ubiquity, accessibility, and variability. Ubiquity is just that there is just so much content out there, right? That's also because of globalization, but basically internet and social media allows the whole world to interact with each other, basically. And the digital world is so vast. It allows so much stuff. Also, the idea of the lack of gatekeeping, or the lack of how did I say this? Oh yeah. So to produce a content, it does not require expertise, professionalism, or qualification, unlike what is required to be a personality behind a television screen or an author to publish a book. There's no boundary. You can produce content anywhere as long as you have a smartphone, which a lot of people already do, and if you have access to the internet. On the one hand, that means there's a lot of production of content. And it's this whole democratization, to the extent that there's even the concept of reposting, where it really exacerbates the ubiquity of the contents that are out there. And also because of that, because of the democratization and the lack of boundary to even use social media or the internet, there's ubiquity in the sense of how much you can access as well. Or that's just accessibility, my bad. That accessibility. So the more ubiquity, the more accessibility as well. It could be the platform, or it could be contents as well. And then because of all that, there's also the variability, right? There's so much democratization means there's a lot of different ideas out there. Even if what I also see is a lot of echo chambers and um, micro communities, because the internet is so vast. Uh, like, I think what McLuhan didn't get right is he talked about how we're becoming this global village, was it? But the thing is, I think to an extent we have, right? But then at the same time, we there is still so many people and so many things that are possible on the internet. It naturally creates communities that are separate from each other with different radicalized ideas or contradicting, ideas that we're not really one single village. But the point is that there is variability. And there's just so many people using, right? There are billions of users. Okay. And then, okay, so the variability, ubiquity, and accessibility, these dimensions are all part of the importance of these three dimensions is due to the fact that it's about normalization. It's the normalization process. And I talk about this normalization process theory. But the point is okay, ubiquity implies that content production and creation are routinely practiced in social contexts. And I say more stuff. Okay. Wait, I'm just going to read this paragraph. Ubiquity implies that content production and creation are routinely practiced in social context. Further, the variety of roles content plays allows for the operation of generative mechanisms. For example, actively producing content, commenting on content requires cognitive participation, or when content is consumed as a source for learning. So this is relating to the theory. Maybe it's not. Never mind. This paragraph is just relating to the model. I'm not. That's gonna be a whole. It's gonna make the video too long. Okay, so this paragraph. So for the point is that the genealogy of Homo contentus is the mass this mass content has become so normalized in our world or in our day-to-day. And then another aspect of normalization of content is what I call contentization. And then as I wrote, I refer contentization to the action of turning something into content for social media. With such normalized practice of interacting with content and variability of content, a Homo contentus will live their day perceiving aspects of their reality as something that has a potential to undergo contentization. So, I was thinking to myself, accessibility and ubiquity kind of makes sense for normalization, right? If there's so much of it and you're interacting with it so much, it's going to get normalized. The important part about variability is to do with how much can become content. It's like how you might point out the hegemony of capitalism, of the whole point is that with capitalism, it's so variable, it can make anything into potential for utility, potential for profit making. In the same way, content is so variable these days. Anything can become content. And basically because your interaction with content is so normalized, even outside of, social media, internet, when you see something in front of you, there is a situation where you would perceive something as potential content. For example, food you eat. What a lot of people do is before they eat their meal, they might take a picture of it, either to share to their family or post it on social media. And what this does is that it's not just, you know, it's not just that you're seeing the world from the frame of, well, the whole point is that you're not just making everything into content, right? You're starting to see the world through the lens of content, but not just as it is. But what the whole thing about content is that we expect a sort of interaction from the audience, from the viewers, which comes in the forms of likes, comments, replies, and so on. So when someone takes a picture of their food, they try to take the picture of it in the most flattering way, right? So they make the subject of contentization content worthy. So if they're seeing the world through what can be content and trying to make it into content, and content, like content is also like you need to make contents content worthy, like to get as much likes as possible, much replies as possible. What you do is you also start to see the world from a lens of how something can be content worthy, and see the world through this almost like masked, delusionized vision of sorts. To some extent, I think saying it is absolutely is too much of a stretch, but to some level there's definitely that, right? It's in a way it's being fake, but then you also have to think that this fakeness, or seeing the world from how content worthy something could be, is so normalized. It's not fake anymore. That's the reality. That's the desert of the real, if I'm using it correctly. Or at least it connects to what I said. It connects to this phenomenon is reflective of media becoming metaphors. Right. Which was media. So basically, I think media's metaphor was about how through media, like especially like advertisements, they present certain stuff in this idealized way, and that kind of makes you internalize a certain expectation on that object. Like for example, an advertisement of a vacation, and when you see the advertisement vacation like to fucking Hawaii, it create you to some extent. The media gives you like what Hawaii is like, and it creates an expectation for you. So when you go to Hawaii, or when you think about Hawaii, that there is that level of expectation that will contribute to how you interact with Hawaii. In the same sense, the phenomenon of contentization will create an expectation for your reality, and therefore how you interact with that reality. It's bidirectional. It's this weird cycle, because you're already also trying to interact with the reality through contentization, but as a result, it would also impact how you interact with reality. So then, that's the whole general concept of Homo contentus, or how all this section is a genealogy. So like that's how Homo contentus is coming to be. I think if we can go even to the more extreme level of what I said, like how contentization becomes even more normalized, that's how a true Homo contentus can be. Right? And like, it's this whole, it relates to the idea of like, do it for the views, do it for the content. Um, it's really interesting to see how people have started to revolve their action around what would make something the most entertaining, but not necessarily what would make something get the most views, which is not necessarily entertaining. It could be about manipulating the algorithm, which is such a cyberpunk-esque way to think. I think our motivations already manipulated by the machines, even more than we realize. Or also another thing, especially with how important thumbnails are, there's this like the shock value, right? A lot of content tries to shock you, to grab your attention, so you click on it, which is not a new phenomenon. If you look at pop art was a lot about shocking you, you know, or in a way, or like to draw your attention. But it's not even just pop art. Like even data art, or this whole cult of the ugly in the art world, it's trying to shock you. It's trying to grab your attention. It could be in the most immoral way, but if they grab your attention, they win. And that's a sentiment that also relates to capitalism, right? Basically, with advertisements or quick ads, or you know, trying to go into your subconscious. You know, it's all about shock. It's all about grabbing your attention and trying to make you not be able to forget, even after years potentially. Like that one dairy chocolate of the gorilla playing drums. I watched that ad like in like year 4 or 3rd grade, and that still stuck with me. It's about shock. It's and then contentization. That means if contentization reflects or manipulates your reality, or you know, contentization is how you perceive reality, that also means you try to see objects through how much it could bring shock value. That will be part of it as well. I didn't write about shock, but I think that's also an important part that I thought about. And then I go into economics. So the reason why I went into economics here is because Homo economics is about economics. So I wanted to draw the connection between Homo contentus and Homo economicus. Because Homo contentus, as much as I want to describe it as its own new paradigm shift, there is a lot of elements of capitalism with it. One being that, you know, like social media is free, but it's not technically free because you're selling your privacy, you're selling your attention. There's a bunch of advertisements, and the algorithm figures out through your searches and privacy, your cookies, to provide you the right ads and to provide you the right products for you to potentially purchase. So it's this social media marketing, and there's the element of that. That's still capitalism seeping its hands, its tentacles through content. And then another aspect, right, is how. Oh wait. Well, for another aspect is that like content making is not just pastime or a way of living, or it is a way of living in the sense that you can make money off it. People's professions are content making. um, and then relates to this. Yeah, like Foucault describes of economicus, Homo economicus, as being himself as his own capital producer and source of earning. And as a content creator, many become their own entrepreneurs, making content themselves and being their own source of earnings. Right. So clearly there is a strong relation, or strong, it's more than a relation. You could see a content creator as just another Homo economicus. Homo contentus is just another Homo economicus. And then going back to the privacy thing, I drew connection to this point of so there was a late modernity neoliberalist critiquer or something. I forget their name. I think her. I just have her last name, Brown. So she argued. So Foucault was like talking about how Homo economicus is his own capital, his own producer, his own source of earnings. But Brown argued that I do not think interest adequately captures the ethos or subjectivity of the contemporary neoliberal subject. So this subject is so profoundly integrated into and hence subordinated to the supervening goal of macroeconomics growth that its own well-being is easily sacrificed to the larger purpose. Typo. And then if you think about how much social media could take your privacy away, like is like trying to destroy you by trying to keep your attention going, all that, it's reflective of being subordinated to the supervening goal of macroeconomic growth. Because all of this, you know, how social media, what it's doing to you, at the end of the day, it's to sell products, it's to profit, you know. So there's that connection again. And then we'll kind of talk about that connection again later. And then my final element of Homo contentus I wanted to go through is the neuroscience. So why am I talking about neuroscience? Well, first of all, I always like because like I do minor in like this humanities the humanities discipline of like arts, film, and philosophy. My major is still biology. I'm starting to narrow down to like maybe RNA, but at the end of the day, I like most things about biology, from ecology to neuroscience to human physiology. I mean, I'm especially interested in DNA, RNA, but anyways, I'm going on a tangent. The point is that I like drawing in what I know about biology into this philosophy because it often adds a new perspective. Not a lot of art philosophers know too much about biology. But what I talk about is not that like intensive, but because I think the important part is that content, social media. The major discourse on social media is its effect on our dopamine transmitters, right? And just a quick overview is that dopamine, you know, is a pleasure-seeking chemical. It's not a pleasure chemical. It's about learning. But that ultimately is what leads to addiction. Because we have this thing called reward prediction error, right? Where there are three reward predictions our brain goes through, which is the outcome is underwhelming compared to the expectation, the outcome is the same as expectation, and the outcome is more rewarding compared to expectation. When the outcome is more rewarding compared to the expectation, that's the reward prediction error, and that's when there's a spike in dopamine, and that's how we learn to seek it more. And basically, social media, especially, is designed in a way to promote the reward prediction error, and in doing so, uh, calls a sort of addictive behavior. But it's not just addictive behavior, because dopamine is responsible for a lot of stuff, including our attention. So, quite literally, like if you want to draw this back into media determinism, this is, I think, one of the most like direct, the most, yeah, I don't know another better way of describing this, but this is the most direct way of observing media determinism, where technology quite literally changes your brain chemistry. Isn't it like, I understand the philosophical, more intangible, social element of media determinism, but this shows a more physical way of media determinism that, of course, reverberates into like social changes. But basically, I'm like uh, doing stuff. But basically, excessive DA is also responsible for ADHD, anxiety, depression, and sleep disturbances. And even without a full manifestation of ADHD, short attention span is a commonly discussed impact of social media. Uh, so basically, um, what this content, social media, and all that is doing is it's creating a paradigm shift, not just because how we interact with our world, but by how it's literally biologically shaping us to have a certain set of behaviors that would consequently, of course, change how we interact with the world again, and with each other. Um, and yeah, I think I kind of repeated myself quite a bit there, but you get the point. And by the way, I hate this hairstyle is not that good, but technically, I tie. If I tie, and usually I don't wear glasses, so it looks fine. But right now it's fine. I keep looking, and it's yeah. Guys, 30 minutes. Maybe it was faster to just read the essay. Um, but also another important part about what I wrote in the neuroscience section is actually the etymology of Homo contentus. So in Latin, contentus doesn't actually mean content. It means satisfaction. So contentus, satisfaction. So it's correlated with the aspect of how dopamine is about learning from satisfaction, learning from all that. So I'm talking about the contentus refers to the neuroscience element of the ubiquity and accessibility and variability of content. Variability is also an important aspect of, reward prediction error, I think. But I also chose the word contentus as a sort of with a homophonic intention because it sounds like content, right? And content is the main factor of Homo contentus. It is the essence. And like I try to search for the word content in like its Latin or Greek origin because I wanted to keep the pattern of like politicus or economicus. But there wasn't a really good word. It didn't end with the us. Contentus did though, and contentus plays in two ways because of that, homophonically, but also because it relates to the DA, reward prediction reward prediction error. So that's why I chose the word contentus. I think it fits really well. If anyone decides to adapt this philosophy, I hope they stick to contentus, because you know I like I'm not like I don't study linguistics, so I'm not like an expert, but I try to play around with it and art and story writing. I always like having double meanings and a little playfulness. So this is a bit of my element into this philosophy. I mean, this whole philosophies or predictions or philosophies, my philosophy, but the name Homo contentus, I want to say, is very me. Yeah. And then my final section, I titled it Semi-Post Homo economicus. And the whole point here is that it's ambiguous if Homo contentus is part of Homo economicus, or is the progenitor, the next step, the next generation after Homo economicus, or even not really related. It's really ambiguous, because, as I mentioned, it's related strongly to capitalism, right? That's how people make money. The content, the social media is another representation of how the macroeconomic growth is enslaving us. And then, but then the whole idea of like consuming and producing content goes beyond just the economic aspect, right? We are still, when we're watching YouTube, when we're on even Discord, when we're scrolling through Instagram, we're not doing it with certain capitalist intention. And in fact, if you think about the definition of Homo economicus, if you go back, it's about rationality of maximizing utility. But Homo contentus is different because it revolves around content. And if you link it back to DA, the difference is that, Homo economicus is a rational animal that focuses on maximizing utility, while the DA social media triggers lead to irrational seeking of utility. So the utility, we're still seeking utility, but it's irrational because our basis is based on the reward prediction error. So economically speaking, like this whole idea of long-term benefit or financial benefit, what we do as content seekers is that we're only seeking it because of what content, the utility content provides for us for its sake, which is a sort of like the reward prediction. I keep repeating myself, but I hope that makes sense. The difference between economicus and contentus is in the rationality of seeking utility, because DA seeking is not rational, right? It's a more intuitive process. It doesn't mean it's... Now, I also want to point out that I kind of like the whole DA, excess DA, and all that puts a negative light on this Homo contentus social media. But I try to take a neutral term. Just because I label it as irrational seeking of utility doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just a different form of living, a different form of behaving, right? Because if the world revolves around irrational seeking of utility, then that's how morality will shift as well. So, I hope if that makes sense. And then also another argument against Homo contentus being just another part of Homo economicus is that contentization, right? Contentization is literally the changing of reshaping of reality that is distinct from simply being Homo economicus. So in that sense, Homo contentus is also another species. And then oh yeah, there is this quote here that Homo politicus has existed side by side with Homo economicus through much of modernity. And only towards the end of the 20th century did Homo economicus finally get the better of Homo politicus. So, considering it, Homo contentus is still in its infancy. Maybe what we're seeing is a similar pattern of Homo economicus, Homo contentus kind of being side by side as Homo contentus develops until eventually it becomes so hegemonic that it beats the better of Homo economicus. I think to some extent I desire this because Homo contentus, in some way, you can see it as people revolving their life around entertainment. I think that's more fun, right? Because we're not. Because the whole point is that. I mean, it also implies like the idea that people are just now trying to make others entertained or have fun. That seems like a brighter future to me. I could be absolutely wrong. I mean, there's already a lot of negative aspects, with content creation and all that. People go too much to the extreme with content creation, and content seeking can consume so much, or content consumption can take so much of your time that you don't do anything else, and it's difficult place. I mean, ultimately it's going to be a good and a bad, a lot of neutral as it gets normalized. If it gets normalized, we never know. This is just the point of Homo contentus is that it already also exists, right? But we'll see if it really outgrows economicus. And then another aspect is that I also argue that from a media archaeologist's perspective, you're not supposed to look at the world from a linear Hegelian perspective. Homo contentus could be just another rise from this technology that could be just a new thing that rises. It doesn't have to be a linear stage, a post element of Homo economicus. And then also the presence of Homo economicus being still so dominant in this Homo contentus world could also be, Fukuyama's idea of like the end of history, because what capitalism does is it's able to make anything into capitalism, right? Look at like, what was it, second wave feminism, or I forgot what it was, but like this whole thing with feminism was that there was a fight for autonomy, but so that the women can work for themselves and be their, make a living for themselves. But what that did, emancipation into exploitation. Capitalism was able to consume that, so now women are just slaves to capitalism, just like, the men. We're all slaves to the system. In the same way, maybe Homo economicus is already devouring Homo contentus. Because if you think about it, YouTube, like in the early days, or like creators, like Twitch streamers, all that. They were doing it not for the money, because there wasn't much money in that career, right? But to be fair, what really popularized and normalized was also with the help of marketing, money making, and putting ads and all of that. Um, so it's a very ambiguous. I think it's um, a bit of both, right? At the end of the day. So that's the whole dilemma of, is Homo economicus, Homo contentus, Homo economicus or not? Oh, okay. And I didn't really talk about it here, but another aspect in general I talked about last video is that the fact that we are so much involved in the digital world. Homo contentus. Oh wait, no. Wait. Maybe I talk about it in the conclusion. Do it. Maybe I should just read the conclusion. Okay. So to conclude, Homo contentus is a rising new form of humans centered around seeking to produce and consume content who are living in the world of contentization. They succeed from Homo economicus as a consequence of social media that allowed for ubiquity, accessibility, and variability of content. These three dimensions of content lead to the normalization of mass production and consumption of content. However, it is difficult to say if Homo contentus is truly a species of its own. It has many similarities to Homo economicus, with social media being a medium of capital accumulation. Nevertheless, social media's role is more than monetary practices to an individual, as it covers many aspects of life. Additionally, the media influences a Homo contentus to behave differently from Homo economicus through neurochemical influence and media ecological effects in shaping reality. Additionally, causal ties between Homo economicus and contentus are ambiguous as well. Subsequently, it is a challenge to state if Homo contentus is part of Homo economicus. Subsequently, it is challenging to state if Homo contentus is part of Homo economicus, is currently at a transitional stage to becoming independent, or has originated independently. It is important to realize, however, that Homo contentus is in the grand scheme of things, is within a bubble. Many do not browse social media or even have a smartphone or internet. Homo economicus can also be seen as a very Western perspective, since many countries have different economic systems and cultural values. Despite this, however, Homo contentus is still an interesting concept to consider regarding how the future of humanity will shape as the digital medium continues to develop. Oh, okay. I thought I had this point where. Okay, so I already gave like a nice conclusion to this, but another thing I wanted to touch upon is how we're moving more and more towards the digital space. We're sort of disassociating from the physical, right? The material. And maybe this Homo contentus is also just a way of how we're moving towards more into the digital world. I swear I talked about it somewhere. Maybe it was in the genealogy. I like this. Yeah. Well, I mean, I already said my point. I don't need to find the exact wording in my essay. I definitely had it somewhere. I had other points, like diminishing of aura. Benjamin Walter, was it? Other stuff, yeah. But I hope that made sense. This was long. Maybe I should have just. No, but reading the essay is boring. I'd rather explain it. But basically, that's Homo contentus. I think I think. That's how I see the current paradigm shift, or that's how I perceive humanity. You know? Especially as a Homo contentus myself, right? As a person who has seen the development of the digital revolution as well, to some extent. I mean, it already happened before me, but I feel that it got really popularized when I was a teenager, or a little before that, especially in terms of social media. Because also Homo contentus, a main actor is social media. So yeah, that's Homo contentus, the content-seeking animal. Finally said it, talked about it. Yay. 50 minutes. Nice. Bye.